Hello, everyone. Welcome to SBJ Live. I'm Dan Kaufman with Sports Business Journal. This is Artificial Intelligence in Sports, your mid-year recap and forecast. And man, this is a popular one. I'm so happy that you all are here. We have 500 plus people registered. I suspect that we'll get about half of those folks to come in and join us live throughout the episode and about half to watch on demand from all over the world. And for good reason, it's this popular because the subject is certainly heavily discussed throughout the world and in the sports industry. And we've got three really incredible folks on our panel who are here to discuss it with us. I will introduce them momentarily along with our moderator. But before I do that, as everyone is trickling in, if this is your first episode of SBJ Live, welcome. I go over a couple logistical items. If it's not your first episode, you'll just have to bear with me for a few seconds. But here are the most important things that the audience can do to enjoy this episode of SBJ Live. One, introduce yourselves in the chat bubble on the right-hand side. There is a chat bubble, and it looks like some folks are typing in there already. Tell us who you are and where you're coming from. And if you see people who you know, feel free to message them. That is open to you all to use how you would like. So please take advantage of it. Two, next to the chat bubble, there's a questions bubble. That's where we want your questions. Don't wait till the end to submit them. There's no specific Q&A period. We want your questions coming in throughout, and Rob will take a look at the questions as they come in. He'll see what's getting upvotes. He'll see what's popular. He'll see what he wants to ask of the panelists, and he will weave those questions in throughout. Okay, so those are the two rules to have a good episode of SBJ Live. I suppose the third rule is to have some really great panelists, and we've got that for this one. So it's my pleasure to introduce to the stage Alex Beckman, Scott Gutterman, Kelly Pratt, and Rob Schafer will take us through it all. Rob, I'll flip it to you to take us forward. Rob.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you again, Scott, Kelly, and Alex, our esteemed panelists here. Thank you to the viewers for tuning in. As Dan said, be sure to use the chat module and the question module early and often. There's no defined period during the session where we'll do Q&A from viewer questions. I'll be weaving those questions in throughout. So drop them in the chat, and we'll make sure to get to those. All right, Scott, Alex, Kelly, thank you again. Let's table set here and start. If you all want to take 2 or 3 minutes each, we'll go around the panel. Introduce yourselves, your role or company background, and as a fun add-on, almost an icebreaker here, give us an example or a little bit of background on how artificial intelligence touches your life or your job on a daily basis. So we'll go in alphabetical order. Alex, start with you.
Oh, great. Okay. Thanks, Rob. And hi, everybody. Alex Beckman from On Platform. I started the company about 10 years ago, and we built a conversational application platform that is powering the world, especially sports brands, leagues, and teams, and how they interact with their fans. Let's see. On the how AI touches us, or how we're interacting with it, we're using artificial intelligence, large language models, and the variety of the field to both power the chat interactions and also help build the chat interactions that our clients are using. And that's creating a lot of cost savings and also a lot of time savings. It's also helping brands to increase the KPIs that matter most to them. And I'll pause there and pass it. I know we'll do a lot in conversation here.
A lot to follow up on there for sure. Kelly?
Hey, first of all, thank you so much for having me. Kelly Pratt, I'm the CEO at InVenue. I spent over 18 years building some of the most advanced tech in the world, and my passion was always in sports, though. I knew I was ready to pivot into sports tech when I was checking Astros game scores, when I was at supercompute conferences, thinking about predicting global weather patterns, and I thought it would be a heck of a lot more fun to apply this to what I love, which is sports. So out of that, I built this predictive analytics engine that really was the core thing that founded InVenue. We deliver predictions on the next moment in sports for media, for micro betting, for sports books, and we are 100% AI and machine learning. And it's a little different because we operate in the live world. So very excited to talk today.
Thanks. Scott?
Scott Gutterman. I'm the SVP of Digital Operations. I oversee the digital technology platforms and the broadcast technology platforms here at the PGA Tour. I've been at the Tour now for 18 years and have had the privilege of helping the Tour get into different waves of technology as they've come out. And so that's been one of the most exciting parts of our jobs here. And ML and AI in general has been a big part of that, especially over the last 10 years. whether we're building something in-house like our brand new scoring system, which is using ML to, and cameras and radar to capture the ball flight and scoring across all of our courses, across all of our events, as well as, working with companies like WSC Sports to use AI to generate video highlight clips as well. And then more recently beginning to explore generative AI. And what that brings to our possibilities for both efficiencies for our staff, as well as possibilities for what we can do for our fans. So we've been pretty invested in AI along the way, and we continue to invest it pretty heavily.
Absolutely, and I think that intro begins to illuminate, and a lot of our viewers will know that the term artificial intelligence, right? It's so broad. There are so many subcategories and disciplines within it. I'll go back around the circle in a snake draft format for this one, starting with you, Scott. It's because your answer was a good segue to this question. What, in your observation in all your years with the PGA, which methods or subcategories within artificial intelligence have you noticed bringing the most impact in the sports industry, whether it be through the PGA's work or just your observation?
I think in general with the PGA Tour work that we do, it's machine learning has been something that we've been invested in for years. We've used it to help generate articles years ago. We've used it again for our scoring platforms. Our data sciences teams over the last 5 years have been very invested in creating things like our win probability model. We're using ML to help generate entertainment for our leaderboards and content for Golf Bet and other parts of our property. So I think that's been a big part of what we've been doing. And we've certainly, I think, with machine learning, we can go in and do very specialized things based on our data sets, based on our content. I think now the opportunities that we're beginning to see is not just thinking about data, but thinking about data and content and how that can be used to create experiences across the web, across all of our platforms. And I think across sports, you'll see there's not too much of a difference because all of us in sports are using machine learning to generate what we can provide for our fans, and working with AWS, who we work very close with, the NFL, F1, and others work very closely with them. You've got next gen stats out of the NFL. You've seen the work that we have been doing along with our TourCast products to not only create entertainment for fans and create a way for them to view our nonlinear competition, but also ways to just help our staff begin to dig more into stats, dig more into what they can get out of storytelling for those stats, whether that goes on our social media platforms, our owned and operated platforms. So it's a tool that I think a lot of people have been using for a very long time, whether they know it directly or not.
Kelly, I'd pose that same question to you, knowing all the experience and expertise you have in the machine learning discipline, particularly.
Yeah, first of all, I look at the sports data. First of all, what the leagues and what the sports themselves are generating in this live capacity. I don't know if you've ever heard of Moore's Law in compute space. We were always looking at how processors were getting faster and more condensed, like year over year. And I kind of think this data that's coming from the game is in the same way. It's doubling or tripling every single year. And the question is, what do we do with that? That's where it's on companies like ours to go out and figure out how to harness that, how to take advantage of it, and do some really, really cool things. And, we wanted to solve the fan experience issue. I think everybody who's good at math and loves compute and loves sports says, I'm going to be the next Bill James. But the question is, what do we want to solve with it? We wanted to solve the fan experience. We wanted to say, hey, let's use all that proliferation of data to help watching this game or this match or this race be just a heck of a lot more fun and more intuitive. So, it's going to be different for all of us, but that's what we were looking to solve, and those are some of the the landscape of what we're working with today.
And that speaks, Kelly, to something you've spoken about, and you mentioned to us in our prior conversations, right? The intention when you're trying to demystify, a sector of sports technology that can get a little buzzwordy at times. I'm sure we'll throw some around in this conversation, but the importance of that intentionality, right? How important has that been for you all as you've been growing and developing the offerings that you have?
It's critical. Anytime somebody, I talk with somebody and they say we use AI in our business, I always ask, and I would expect people to ask us too. It's like, what do you use it for? What are you trying to do? What is the purpose of your ML in our case? And I emphasize this with my team. We talk about it all the time. We want to think and predict like fans. We want to interpret the game like a fan would, digest the things, predict the things that they want to know or that they're already thinking. And once you kind of define that overarching goal of your AI or ML or however you're going to, combine those things together, that's when it gets really interesting. Before that, it's just AI and ML, and it can be doing anything. But we should be very intentional about what we're trying to solve and what we're going after. I mentioned Bill James, like his goal was to, really identify the value of a player. We want to use the numbers and all this proliferation of data to understand what's exciting and great about this moment so people can enjoy it or bet on it or interact with it.
Yeah. Alex, it brings me to you, especially in a, touching a section of AI that has had so much conversation around it in the last year or two, generative AI. What goals did you all have, or intentions have you all had with On, and how have you all gone about solving those issues through the use of it?
Yeah, I think you used the word demystification, and Kelly, you kind of talked about AI to what end or why, and I think that's been a big part of our goal set. Is I like to explain it sometimes, like think about like sort of some of the TV shows I watched. I was watching Winning Time, and thinking about this topic a few months ago, and I realized there's no computers on desks in the Lakers offices there, right? So there was a time when the forum was sold out. People were having plenty of fun. Fans were, doing all the things that fans love to do. The Lakers were winning, and they didn't have a single computer in the office. And now you'd be crazy to walk around any sports team's office and not see every device everywhere. And I've gotten to grow up in the environment where we brought software into the sports industry. There was a time where instead of the word AI or the term AI, we were just talking about what was software going to do for sports. And I think here we see, rightfully so, sports teams and leagues are worried about what will AI mean? What can it do? Is it cost effective? And a big goal of mine and ours as a company is to give sports teams and give sports fans their first known really good experience with AI. And I think we've all discussed kind of already, it's been there for a while. People may have touched it and not quite known it, whether it was generative or non-generative or some variant. But now being purposeful and taking a KPI that matters, selling more tickets, selling more merchandise, getting fans the information they need when they want it, getting fans the information they need even if they don't know they need it yet or want it yet. Those can be great uses of that kind of technology that we're bringing into this marketplace, and making it affordable, safe and responsible, and measurable are all really important parts of this journey that we're seeing now. People smile and say they get it, and that's really fulfilling.
I think the one thing I'd add to what Alex has laid out too is accurate and consistent. Right?
Yeah.
So that is going to be paramount for us in sports. We can't be in a position where we're creating experiences where the data is being made up or the data is not accurate every time you see it.
Right.
How?
Sorry, Rob, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Alex.
I was going to say, sometimes I like to describe AI like a person. I mean, if we're trying to create an artificial intelligence, we're modeling it after us. And I joke, like I'll drive by the stadium sometimes and somebody will ask me, how many people does Oracle Park, fit? And I don't know the exact number. I'll say about 45,000, because that's what I think is right. I've actually not even gone back and looked. But when we talk about AI hallucinations, that's kind of what's happening. It's kind of knows something. And just like the best of us if we're confident, we kind of make it up. The accuracy is key. And I think when you're talking to a buddy in the car, you have the context. You know that they're not giving you the exact number. There's issues here that we get to all fix and describe and move forward with. But again, it's trying to create, how do we understand it? And then how do we fix it if we need to fix it? All of those things are on our lineup here, I think, together collectively.
Scott, you touched on this, but how have you seen it evolve from the property side? Some of these issues that Alex is talking about, addressing affordability, addressing safety, security. You mentioned accuracy. How have you seen the approach or perspective on that evolve from the property side in the last few years?
Yeah, so for us in particular, IP protection is paramount. We've all seen mistakes where people have people internally at businesses, whether sports business or not, are loading code into code generators, or they're loading their stats into open not into open API, but open APIs, and to other platforms where they know that they're now losing control of that data, and people are taking advantage of it. So that's one of the areas that's paramount to us as well too. The thing that we're trying to work on here, particularly around generative AI, which Alex is just addressing, is how do we get to that accuracy? How do you refine a model or fine tune a model, or how do you use an approach like RAG, or retrieval augmented generation, to kind of narrow the scope of the data set that it's actually looking at and responding to make sure that you're getting into that getting to that accuracy. So I think that's a big part of it. If Rory McIlroy lands a ball on the 18th hole of the Tour Championship and he's 10 feet away and he makes that shot 20% of the time, we don't need the generative AI model creating that data for us. That just needs to be something that we're creating with the model. They're taking that from our data and then presenting that as part of the model. So presenting that accuracy and learning it. The other part of it, which is I think we're all dealing with, is like getting these models to learn and understand our sport. That's taking some time and some training, understanding an albatross, a birdie, a bogey, understanding the idiosyncrasies of a very exciting shot. Somebody may make an eagle, but the exciting part of the eagle may actually be the approach shot, because they get it to within 2 inches and then they can tap in for an eagle. Like, that context is just not built into these models at all yet, in particular for our sport and certainly for a lot of other sports. So I think that's the other bit of it. And then we're also kind of learning as we work with these models, like which models work well for which uses, right? So big part of what we're working on here right now is model evaluation and how to come up with a harness. Like, working with AWS on this right now is how do we create a test harness? What tools do we use from Bedrock to be able to look at multiple models and decide that, there's one model, maybe Claude's better for story generation, but maybe Titan's better for statistical analysis, statistical presentation. And how do we do that? And so the way that really leads us to is what we're talking about here is how do you operationalize all of this? How do you do it? Because then you get at the costs, then you get at, how are you going to build this out? How are you going to maintain it? And then as we talk with as a team, it's like, what happens when you go from, you have to treat this like when you go from iOS, 17 to iOS 18, or even the, in between builds, when you go from Claude, when you go from Claude 2.1 to Claude 3.0, but you spend all this time fine tuning Claude 2.1, how do you make sure that everything that you've done is, it gets looped into a software development lifecycle that says we're going to make sure that 3.0 is not only at 2.1 level for golf, but it's, at least as good, if not better. And so these are all the questions that we're trying to answer as we get ready, as we're actually starting to build things now in generative AI.
We're getting a lot of great questions in the chat, so I'm gonna pose one to the group. Alex, maybe start with you here, and it dovetails off of the part of the conversation that we're having right now. This is from Connor Mahoney. How do you approach continuous testing for accuracy, security, and toxicity in fan-facing Gen AI products? Trying to automate that testing, or do you perform it manually? And Scott and Kelly, feel free to chime in as well.
That's a really good question. I mean, and to Scott's point, Scott, kind of what you were getting to, which I really like, is, or what you were sharing, is this idea that you're doing a lot of testing, you're creating harnesses, and also, I think, evaluating where is there good use for AI and various types of AI, and where is maybe they're not good use yet. And I think about it like it's a really awesome opportunity and a really amazing technology to integrate, but it's not ready, I think, personally, for every area. I wouldn't replace my entire software stack with it, and there's really no way to or need to. Right. So I think about that, and I think about, we have some great chat platforms live with some amazing teams. So, we don't let generative AI be customer facing in some areas where we know that it's just not controllable and not ready for business yet to be a live response engine. I'll give an example. We do ticketing with a lot of teams. And one of the things we handle is like ticketing Q&A. Can I bring my drum in? And you can replace the word drum with whatever you're imagining. And you can also then imagine that no team wants to have a hallucination at that moment when somebody asks, can they bring something in? And the best models that we test, automatic and manually combined, 1 out of something times, they'll say yes. 1 out of something times 10 times, they'll say yes emphatically. Absolutely bring your drum, bring your friends with drums and make a lot of noise. And that's where we are in this world. And so we have found great ways. We've created a modular system. We insert generative AI and other types of AI where it makes sense and where it's 100% helpful with zero risk. And we're not ready to insert it where it has the potential for that risk. The KPI risk reward isn't worth it. And so Connor, that question I think is still, it's about narrowing the use and narrowing the potential for outcomes as much as it is controlling the technology that is, I think, purposefully less controllable than other technologies in the live field of use.
100%.
The one thing I would add there too is, because we're getting into the areas of red teaming, the one term that we started using here is brand alignment or brand strategy. So like red teaming, we know we're going to go at the toxicity and bias, and you can do your best to put guardrails up. But the other thing, which there are no guardrails built for from these tools, which is how do you get brand alignment? So if somebody asks a negative question about one of our players, like how do we have to make sure that that is going to be brand aligned for the player. It has to deal with the brand things that our comms teams and our marketing teams have traditionally dealt with, that we don't necessarily want, somebody being able to say, the PGA Tour chatbot told me this thing about this player, and it's completely a negative thing. That's in our world, that's our responsibility to make sure that doesn't happen. But we are having to figure out how do we tackle brand alignment as well as the red teaming that will be traditionally parts of these models.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, guys. I'll go to one more viewer question from Austin Hurwitz. I think this will be an interesting one to go around the group with. Is there another brand, parentheses sports, or in another industry you're aware of that you feel is leveraging AI in an interesting or impactful way? And then he says relevant to sports. Kelly, maybe we'll start with you there if you have any observations off that question.
Yeah, well, is there another brand or industry using AI? I think we're all challenged right now to find and use AI and use this amazing growth in the industry in any way we can. And we've all got different viewpoints, though. And this is one thing that when I talk to data scientists or interview new machine learning engineers, the truth is all of our industries they pose different data problems, different challenges. The ML, the AI, we're solving different problems. The data sets are different. And by the way, even the end user could be different depending on what you're trying to achieve. Scott was talking about accuracy, like of a shot, what's going to happen. And I think he brought up like 20% chance of making the putt. Is that right? Is that wrong? Well, I'll tell you that a fan perception of accuracy is very different from a sportsbook view of accuracy. So what are you trying to achieve with that, and how do you find the best models to bring the best return on a sports bet, or to keep people watching? And that's things that we do day in and day out. And we scrub the data, we look at the data, we look for patterns, we test every single model type, and go through probably millions and millions of data points to find trends, to find predictability, and to prove the efficacy of our models. Everything that I just described is something that other industries outside of sports are doing day in and day out. Can I predict this thing? Can I present it in properly? Do I have confidence in it? And can I do it at scale? Sports brings, especially live sports, brings a scale problem to which it would challenge just about any industry, by the way, because we're literally doing broadcasts of AI, like it's OTT AI, if you will. And it's just purely because every second we're getting live data from the court or from the field or from the track that's saying new information that you as a fan are going to be digesting with your eyes. And so we were literally getting hundreds of millions of data points throughout the course of this match, and we just applied this traditional thinking process, just like all industries will, and we all have our unique challenges.
Yeah, it's
lots
interesting.
Let's do it. I could keep going, but.
And we'll ask you to. So just interesting, you mentioned scale as kind of a potential limitation or challenge that obviously you all are conquering through your modeling. I'm curious what you all see as maybe some other limitations. Alex, you've talked about a few of them just in terms of narrowing the accessibility there when you need to. What some other limitations are that we are working towards overcoming to get to some untapped, potential applications of AI, specific to sports.
We need touches. I feel like it's like playing a sport. Very few organizations that we have met have had the number of successful interactions with deployments of AI that allow their orgs to, I think, feel really comfortable. Scott, what you talked about that you're deploying is kind of heartwarming because you really are getting the touches in, right? And getting the organization to see it and feel the data. And so I think moving forward, getting use cases that are impactful, that touch KPIs, again, that are measurable and conversable internally. We had a really cool panel with the Kings and Eric over there, the head of digital, and his team. And we were on a panel with like folks on player development, folks on digital, folks on business intelligence, all using AI differently, different tool sets, different vendors to accomplish their goals. And I felt like that's kind of where I would imagine all brands need to get to, is having that level of interaction where they feel like they've got their arms around it and they're digesting it and then using the data to make decisions and then redeploying that strategy and advancing it. And with regard to like other industries, our company is working with retailers and some non-sports clients, and we see different industries, again, a lot of overlap in goals, and then some have slightly different goals or needs. And we're seeing that be kind of something that has crosstalk. We're able to bring those needs back and forth and then those services back and forth. So, but 10,000 touches, 10 million touches before you're an expert, digital as well as like on the court or on the field.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. It leads to another viewer question that I see at the top here from Trevor. How are you using AI today or see it being used to in the future to monetize sports content? I think we've obviously touched on that first question, but the second one I think is what might be interesting to hear from you all about. Scott, I'll start with you there, and Alex and Kelly, I know you all will have some interesting things to say there too on the potential to monetize.
Yeah, I think for us it comes down to, and Kelly kind of started this conversation, which is the why. What is the why are we doing this, or what is the experience that we want our fans to have? If we focus on the experience is kind of the things that's actually going to get sponsored, right? It's the thing that's going to create interest. The AI, like for a while, everybody's going to want to put a brand on something that says generative AI or AI, but really it's about the experience. So for something like for us, like we have our TourCast product, which is our 3D representation, basically our digital twin of everything that happens on the course. What we don't have in there right now is commentary. So one of the things that we're working on right now is like, could we enable commentary in TourCast so that fans are following? That's one of the few places you can actually follow a group all the way through, or a single player all the way through their entire round. So why not give them commentary, and why not give them commentary in a tone that they would like, whether it's a sportscaster style commentary or just straight statistical analysis type commentary? How do we create those experiences? To me, those are the things that will begin to become monetized, right? So we'll lean into that type of stuff. So we're trying not to do shiny object sort of opportunities, right? Because those are typically very short lived, and especially in what we're all dealing with right now, those are things are changing so quickly that we don't know what we'll do. We also just have to be, like what we're talking about, we have to be protective of what we are going to do with generative AI in particular. Just to make sure that we don't end up off brand for somebody. And to the point that Alex has made, and I think we're all kind of making, which is like there's not quite a trust factor so like you probably won't see for the immediate future the tour putting out a chat bot for anybody to just ask any question into, because it's not that we don't want to do it, and we've thoroughly explored it here. It's just a question of like, how can we make sure that experience is always the way it should be, and then how do we protect our own brand, as I mentioned earlier, but how do we protect the sponsor's brand as well too?
Right.
I can jump into what a great question, one that we talk about all the time. So when you listen to the fan, like when you give the fan this experience that they want, which means they want, how they want to participate, watch, or interact with the game. If you can harness that, it's such a virtuous cycle. So we spent last year working with the NBA in this Launchpad program to figure out what microbets or what interactions within the moment are going to be most sticky. We studied with them and really came to terms with, look, fans are interested in a game of runs. Fans are they like shorter burst of activity, and we designed an interaction to do that. And the reason I'm going into this is we also tested it with their fans, and we found and proved that when you can get a fan to interact with the live game that they're watching, when it's super in context, when it's relevant to what they're thinking, they stay. In our case, they stayed 60% longer than those who did not interact. So you talk about monetization, you really need to look at, in our case, when you can keep the fans' attention, it's a virtuous cycle for everybody. They watch longer, they stay longer, they interact longer. That is good for microbets, that's good for sports betting, but that's also good for advertising. It's good for sponsorships. It's incredibly virtuous, and that's how I see the best potential to monetize AI and ML, at least relative to what we do, is give the fan what they want, and they will give back in return because it's just wholesome, it's good, it's about the sport, and it's what we're already doing. So,
Alex,
do you have anything to add on the monetization question?
No, I think Scott and Kelly said it perfectly. I think the sports is such a high scale, high stakes activity. Being able to do things fast, being able to get things out fast, is made possible and made better by generative AI and its future selves. And I think we're going to see more opportunities. And I think about, like, I love this game, Pass the Buck, right? Where you're sitting at a baseball game betting on what's the next pitch going to be. And when we were starting, on platform 10 years ago, when it was still Game On, that was actually kind of the genesis of it. I was sitting there playing and chatting with my buddies and thought, I wish I could do this all the time for any game, right? Not gamble, but base hit, foul ball, strike. Mm-hmm. And then we realized that's impossible 10 years ago. The scale on that is nuts. You would need literally a really, really amazing, very trustworthy person watching every game, constantly deploying code. It wasn't a business. And for the first time last year, I started to see it might be a business soon. We're handling the scalability issues. We're handling the understanding issues. And I can see a near-term future where I'm able to deploy Pass the Buck in real time for every game all the time. And I think, Kelly, you just mentioned that, right? How do you get fans engaged in that moment? And so, if every Moore's Law, if we keep doubling and getting better and better, faster and faster, and the half-lives keep dropping, we're going to see more things possible that weren't possible with the software that we all grew up with. And that will lead to monetization because, if your team wins, you make more money. If your fans are happy, you make more money. And if you can do both of those at the same time, that's the silver bullet.
We're getting a lot of questions in here on generative AI, understandably. So, Alex, I'll direct this one to you first. How do you see this from Javier? How do you see the large incumbents in the Gen AI space playing in the sports industry? He parenthesizes OpenAI, Anthropic, et cetera.
A lot. I mean, you can't watch an NBA Finals right now or a playoff game leading up to it without seeing one of the major incumbents on one of the center court boards, right? And then the technology drives off of that, and we see all of these major companies that we work with and look up to and partner with, at every single level, with the teams and the leagues and so on and so forth. And then I think there is the need for productization, specialization, the interaction, building out, thinking about the fan uniquely. There's always been a really great symbiosis in Silicon Valley and everywhere between big tech and companies like ours that we create together, and we specialize in different things and at different times. And so I think some of these LLMs, they're so expensive to create, they're so expensive to maintain. I'm glad I don't have to fundraise to build one of those. I love partnering with OpenAI, partnering with Google, and partnering with other companies, Microsoft, to take those and productize them and help solve real problems for real clients of ours. So here to stay, and I also think in a good way. And then the business world will help settle out each company's right focus in that area.
one of the things that I would add there too is I agree with Alex. I think the incumbents are here because right now the compute and the power that's needed to execute all this is really, it's going to have to be done at the scale of an AWS, right? It's going to need to be done by those companies that really have made those investments and are going to make future investments that are going to be very important. But building products on top of it will be up to us. I also look at it, I've recently been thinking about looking at it, you look at it the same way, look at rights deals now, you look at, we've talked about the top 100 or 300 things, 300 most watched events, are sporting events, right? That's not just on television and streaming, but that's also, as far as engagement goes, it's really live news and sports that really get people engaged. And so I think eventually these companies are going to really turn to live news and sports because generally they are the heart. You see them making the deals now already for news in certain areas. I think the deals for sports and the opportunities to even license some assets in sports that we create will eventually happen as well too. But it's very lucrative, and it's not. Years ago I was in the financial services sector, and what Kelly was talking about before is like sports and financial services are probably the two of the most complex, if not the most complex, data experiences to deliver on for businesses. And so I think that the incumbents they already know that. I know they already know that from talking to a lot of them. I think they're going to come tackle sports, much like we've seen social media tackle sports and search tackle sports and other things. It's going to be an important part of their business. They just haven't quite gotten there yet.
What I would add to that,
Miguel asked a question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Kelly.
Oh, no, I would just say what I would add to that is such a big believer in not recreating the wheel, by the way. So as we look at generative AI, if we as an industry keep recreating the same thing, we're not going to move forward as fast as we should. So I'm a believer in, those who do great at some things, like let's build on that and let's go with it. Our company happens to be superstars at supercompute things and making servers deliver stuff really quickly and interpreting things on that. And I would love to see a world where we start to use feeds like ours in ways where we can allow others who are good at designing UX and the creativity that's going to be needed for next gen experiences and generative AI. I think that's where we're going to start to see something really, really powerful, is when we stop recreating the same things and start to build off of each other. Love open source, and I'd love to see us get there as an industry so that we can truly change the game.
There's a good question in here from Miguel that I think acts as a follow-up. How should we think about implementing AI when picking between using point solutions versus partnering with some of the massive models? It's something that we've touched on here a little bit, but I'd be curious to get your all's input on that.
I can jump on that first. I think, and this maybe builds on what Kelly just said, is that we are really good at golf here. We really know professional golf, and we know how to build experiences around professional golf. And so we are going to be, our teams will build kind of the point solutions that will create golf experiences on top of these platforms. We will have to go, I don't ask my teams to go build a video player, right? Because there's great video players out there already. We can go use a video player. I think this is going to be the same thing. We probably, we want to use models that are built to do certain things and built to do that in a certain way, and that they've been trained in a certain way so that we can bring golf into them. And I expect over time they'll get smarter about sports. But I don't think that I don't think that's going to change the way that we operate now, which is like stick to your expertise, your subject matter expertise, lean on those that can make the bigger platforms and services robust and dependable. And look, you can even see now, like we're seeing those. We don't have the resources of a Google or an AWS or an Anthropic to go and train models at scale the way they do, and we still see a lot of these entities struggling with the outcomes of what they release. So we aren't necessarily going to get into building an image generator. That there are other people built better to do that, but we will train an image generator to treat golf, take golf into account.
I couldn't agree more, Scott. That subject matter expertise it's vital into making a model for sports And there are no models out there today that you could just plug stuff in and capture the nuance of your sport. That's one of the reasons we love to collaborate with leagues, because they have that subject matter expertise. So, for example, we spent the last year working with NASCAR to really take a look at, I mentioned earlier about the fans, but also to take a look about what things mean as we get this beautiful data coming from the race. How do we interpret that? How do we design it for the fans? We take our expertise in machines and machine learning, and we build off of that to create models. I just don't see a world where there is a one size fits all model for a sport prediction. There's just they're each different. They each have different nuances. We have models for NFL, for NBA, for MLB, and for NASCAR right now, and each is very different. There's unique situations, and we really need that subject matter expertise to come in and contribute throughout the whole process. And we love how that's really worked like gangbusters with the NBA and our great partners at NASCAR.
I think too on the question about point solutions versus trusting kind of the incumbents. Sometimes I look back at other trends where there have been major sea changes and think about what did it look like in 2008 when the App Store launched for Apple, and almost every brand had to decide overnight how are they going to get HTML5 compliant, how are they going to build their apps, how are they going to get up and running, and just like now, then there were hundreds of thousands of we help you appletize your content startups. That was the new .ai startup trend in 2008. And I remember working in the industry at that time and realizing, gosh, everybody, we were working with Disney at the time, the company I was working with. Disney had like 15 or 16 point solutions, working with all the major big players to create their app strategies across all the different portfolios they owned. And if you look at it today, they've narrowed it down to a really solid. There's a certain amount of big backbone providers, a certain amount of point solutions, and then the rest is managed by them. In 2008, they didn't spend nearly what they spend on their mobile team as what they do now. They've grown the strategy by experimenting with point solutions and getting to a really good place. And so I think now it's a similar model of invite the right point solutions to help you navigate the right big players and fail and succeed your way to a strategy that feels like the right one long term. I think we're all smarter now. We've lived through enough of these major changes that we kind of have our senses up for what to avoid. And as an owner of a business myself that is in this space, thinking about how do we make sure it's easy to experiment and move forward so that brands can learn. But I think we can look to the past to kind of make the best decisions now, and that feels about right. But at some point, the fragmentation ends, the strategy is set, and we know kind of what pieces and which puzzles slot into which orgs.
A lot of our shifting gears here. A lot of our most upvoted questions in the chat have been around fan engagement, fan experience. Obviously, relevant to sports properties, teams, leagues, vendors. So I'll combine a few of them, and thank you to Brittany and to Miguel for these. Looking for specific examples of how AI could be leveraged to improve the fan experience, or perhaps for different fan engagement initiatives. I'll pose that to the group because I think all of you will have a lot of interesting things to say to that.
Well, I can bring up two examples that we're kind of actively working on right now. One is a tool for efficiency with our broadcast teams, with our groups, and one would be to give our broadcasters a console that they could, if they're following the featured group on ESPN Plus, say we're following these three players, we're following them. Give me give me one talking point after every hole, or two talking points after every hole, whatever they want to be generated, so that they can work that into the commentary about it. So what it would do, it would surface. You would look at all the content and data and surface what's happened. So if Rory's made this shot before the Tour Championship, it's right there with, he makes it 10% of the time. Or, Rory had a similar shot, 10 years ago at the Tour Championship to win the FedEx Cup, and he made that shot or he missed it, right? And also, it's not the other thing we haven't talked about is like multimodal responses. So if that comes up, what we want our broadcast teams to be able to do is not only have that kind of nugget to talk about, but that video should be coming right up out of our MAM so that they can then be moved into the broadcast interface that allows it to be played back at the same time on the telecast. Mm-hmm. And so that's the type of internal tool that we're talking about. The other one that I'll that we're looking at with a number of companies right now is we have our Every Shot Live initiative that we do at the Players Championship, where we show every single shot from the first drive to the very last putt at the Players Championship. And that's done on 24 streams in the morning on Thursday and Friday, and 24 streams in the afternoon. And if we wanted to, right now, all you get on those streams, and we stream that over ESPN Plus, is all you get on those streams is natural sound and the players talking and everything else, which is great. And it's a great experience for fans. But if a fan wants commentary on those streams, we aren't going to bring in 48 talent, 2 talent on every stream to talk. Like, it just doesn't scale right. So the question becomes, how can we use generative AI to actually create commentary eventually? That, again, you could have two synthetic voices, 2 synthetic analysts talking to each other about this group that's making a round. But that all has to be trained. So how do we eventually get to that? And then that eventually branches itself out to, what language would you like to hear it in, or what tone would you like to hear it in, or what style would you like to hear it in? And it creates that sort of flexibility. So those are 2 things that we're thinking about right now that we're kind of working on to see how we can see what it'll take for us to get there.
Yeah.
How close do you think we are there, Scott, on the commentary side? It's an interesting use case that I spend a lot of time thinking about, to having that be conveyed authentically.
Yeah, I don't think we're terribly close yet. I think we're closer to textual commentary, and I think that's where we'll start. Going back to something that was asked before, which is, how do we? I got to figure out how we test all of this for accuracy and consistency to make sure it's right, and how do we automate all of that? And that's going to be the approach. I think, and you're seeing this, there's companies like Cam.ai, 11 Labs, and others that are also working on this. So I think for something that's like video on demand, and the Masters team did this with IBM and Augusta as well too. I think if you want a synthetic voice to read your stats, like, you can get there and you can do different styles of that. So you could read, Rory McIlroy's shot 1, 300 yards, 125 yards to the hole, that type of thing, where it's actually voicing the data that we have, but that's not really commentary, right? And so that's where we want to get, which is we want to get towards commentary.
Absolutely. And Kelly and Alex, I'll let you jump in on the fan engagement question.
A couple more buzzwords, right? Fan engagement and fan experience. It's stuff that it's turned into meaningless words, kind of like AI and ML. So I always like to kind of level set on what we're talking about. So historically, and as long as we've known, watching sports has been really non-interactive for so long, kind of that one-to-many experience. You see what people have chosen for you. And this is one of the reasons that I built InVenue, because at a game, I'm sitting there building my own experience. I was at a Yankees game by myself when I was in New York one time, and I wanted other people to watch with me. And so I connected on social media. I texted my brothers, I posted pictures.
I think we may have lost Kelly's audio.
Okay, so we'll see if we can get that sorted out technically, and then pick up where Kelly was going there. Alex, do you want to jump in? You had any thoughts on the film? Yeah,
I'll pick up where Kelly left off, and same experience. I was sitting at the Giants game during the World Series in the even years of the 2010s, and melting my phone's batteries, chatting with my buddies, and I mean, again, fan experience, fan engagement have become buzzwords, but we just think about it like, are we helping fans do something that they want to do more of? And then does that make the team better too? And a couple of areas specifically to answer the question. One, there's content in and content out, right? We're building conversational platforms so that fans can literally chat with each other and chat with their favorite content, their favorite teams, get the highlights, get what they need, figure out where to park, all of those things. We can use AI to help us better understand what the fans are asking. And there are AI models that specialize in that. And, Scott, you mentioned multimodal questions. Traditional NLP and NLU platforms, as soon as you throw an and in there, like what is the score and where is the best hot dog, you've lost it. And so we're modular. We let our clients decide which LLM model they want to use. If they're a Microsoft shop, if they're a Google shop, we're not going to make them go one way or the other. So we give them a way to test, we give them a way to integrate, and then we can help understand coming in. And then going out, we can use AI models that are for tone, to soften tone, to engage tone. Scott, you brought up a great point around like, what's an albatross? What's an eagle? What was the most exciting shot that led to that opportunity? Maybe the putt was not the most exciting part. Oftentimes it's not. And so with fan personalization, and I'll give an example, with the NBA playoffs going on, first year in a while that my Warriors have not been in. And at the same time, I've fallen in love with other teams. And so you can use great AI models as a company like we do to help understand who are these fans. If you liked the Warriors, who are you likely to be rooting for now or not? It might not be the same at this point as it was when the playoffs started. It might not just be that I hate all of the West Coast teams. So we're using mass pockets of data that we've gathered to help create decisions that help drive fan engagement or just people chatting with each other. Throwing in an extra Luka highlight to a fan that might like Luka can be learned by a software engine like ours because of the ability to use AI to crunch the numbers, whereas other software platforms might not have gotten there fast enough. And happy to also engage more. It's so specific, I think, that it's hard to really give generally. But if there's a KPI that it makes sense to apply a model to, then we're looking into that. And Kelly, I'll let you cut back in here. Sorry.
AI is a good fan experience is power glitches that don't disconnect you. Apologies. No, fan experience just really it's what we want to experience as a fan. And when AI can recognize and make that a one-to-one experience and not one-to-many, that's the day that I'm looking forward to. When it recognizes who I am and gives me the interaction that I want and doesn't try and force fit an experience onto me that's unnatural. Because I want to watch the game when I'm at a Mavs game. I don't want to keep looking down at my phone, but I want something to do during those timeouts or during the free throws. Maybe you're the same, maybe you're not, but we need to recognize personalization is the way of the future. And I want to watch certain players. I want to watch certain drivers. I want to watch Ryan Preece because I love the car cameras when he's racing because I just have a connection after Daytona last year, just kind of understanding a lot about the race. So understand and give the ability to personalize. Super exciting.
So we could do this all day, and I'm sure our viewers feel the same way, given the volume of questions here. But given we're going to have to get out of here in a few minutes, and we thank you all again for your time. As a last question here, I want to leave our viewers with something they can use moving forward, in addition to all the insights from the first 50 or so minutes of our conversation. So let's go around the board one last time. And if any of you all have one or two pieces of actionable advice as, our viewers are looking at developing, potentially implementing AI-powered solutions or services or technologies in their businesses. Scott, we'll start with you, but just one or two pieces of actionable advice that you have on that front.
I would say two things. I think one is experiment. You got to experiment. You've got to get in there and play. You've got to enable your teams to get in there and play and experiment with what they want to do. And I think the second piece is remembering that AI, whether it's generative or ML, like now it's for the whole organization, right? So there are needs across the entire organization. So I think getting in and establishing policies, establishing the freedom to experiment is extremely important and will lead to positive impact.
I'd probably say, the first thing is, so I love that. I love the experimenting, but I would say stick within what you know best. Like be a subject matter expert and build something that you add unique value. When you start to cross into these worlds of maybe there's already a solution for that, or maybe it's somebody else does that, try and use those things and fold into your expertise and your speciality, because then you're not recreating the wheel, you're creating something new. And I think that's where the most value is. And experiment, open source, move fast, and stay true to whatever that mission is that you set, what you wanted to do with the AI and ML.
Hard to give advice after that. I would maybe just take baby steps. Like in terms of how to experiment, there's no overnight solution to your org being an AL expert. Pick an area, pick a KPI, pick a budget, and do something with AI this week. There's so many people out there who are able to help, want to help, and if it doesn't work, if you take a baby step and you limit it to a part of the org where it's not connected to your main revenue line and it's not public facing, there are great examples of AI and ML being used right now to create efficiencies in areas that are not public facing. So there's a way for every org to experiment this week with AI, generative AI, ML in this space. And I would say pick it and do it.
Alex, Scott, Kelly, thank you so much for taking the time. This has been fantastic. Rob, thank you for keeping everyone on track here. We appreciate your time. To the audience, thank you for joining us. There's much, much more from SBJ when it comes to artificial intelligence in sports, especially from Rob and the rest of the SBJ tech team. And if you want more of these discussions, interactions in person, you're all going to receive an email from me after this, inviting you to look into Thought Leaders Tech Retreat, which is our retreat in San Diego at the end of July, where we have AI on the agenda, along with many, many other things. And I hope to see you there. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you next time.